I learned a long time ago that water has a memory. You can move dirt, pour concrete, even convince yourself you've changed the shape of the land. But water always remembers where it belongs. My neighbor found that out the hard way, and by the time it was over, his brand new basement looked more like a swimming pool than a finished room. My name's Russell Mercer, and I've been farming outside a little town called Benton Ridge, Illinois, most of my adult life. Bought my land back in '82, 47 acres of dark black dirt that my dad used to say could grow corn if you sneezed near it. Flat land, beautiful land, but flat comes with a catch. When the spring storms roll through and dump inches of rain in a hurry, water starts moving across every acre like it's got somewhere urgent to be. Out here, if your drainage works, nobody talks about it. If it doesn't, that's all anybody talks about. My grandfather understood that better than anybody. Back in the 50s, he worked with the county and installed a drainage tile system under the south field and a shallow ditch running along the eastern edge. Nothing fancy. Didn't look like much. Just a narrow cut through the grass with enough grade to move water east into the county drainage channel. It had been there nearly 70 years. Legal easement, county maps, survey records, all of it. Farmers around here knew exactly what it was. You leave it alone because half the ground nearby depends on it. Then Trevor Hale bought the 10-acre parcel next to mine. Trevor wasn't from around here. Came in from Naperville, made good money in commercial real estate, and decided he wanted the country life. Big truck that had never seen mud, polished boots, designer sunglasses, the whole thing. Nice enough at first. Smiled a lot. Shook hands hard like he was closing a deal. I walked over the afternoon. He was standing with his contractor looking over the property. Thought I'd welcome him and save trouble later. Trevor, I said, glad to have you out here. Just one thing you ought to know. That drainage ditch on your west line, county easement, needs to stay open. He looked where I pointed. That ditch wasn't exactly scenic. Little uneven, wild grass around the edge. He gave me a half smile. That old thing. Yep. He chuckled. Honestly, I was thinking about cleaning that up. Maybe filling it and grading everything level. I shook my head. Can't do that. Why not? Because it isn't decorative. Water from my fields drains through there. Been county protected since Eisenhower. That smile faded. Well, nobody mentioned that when I bought the place. Might want to check with county engineering. He nodded, but I could already tell he didn't like hearing another man tell him what he could or couldn't do on land he'd just paid for. Still, he said okay. And for a while, I figured that was the end of it. Spring rolled in. Trevor's contractors built a huge white farmhouse with black trim and wraparound porches like something out of a magazine. Looked expensive. He landscaped everything new sod, decorative rock, little maple trees lined up perfectly. My wife Diane kept saying, he sure likes things neat. And I'd just shrug. That first big storm came late April. Thunder all night. Rain hitting the windows so hard it sounded like gravel. By sunrise I stepped onto the porch with coffee and felt my stomach drop. My north field was underwater. Not puddles. A full spread of standing water glinting under gray skies, stretching across rows I'd planted 2 weeks earlier. Corn seed drowned before it ever had a chance. I threw on boots and drove the side-by-side straight to the east boundary. And that's when I saw it. The ditch was gone. Not blocked in one spot. Gone. Filled completely with fresh dirt and graded smooth like it had never existed. Bright green sod laid over top of it. Trevor had erased 70 years in one weekend. For a second, I just stood there staring. Rain dripping off my hat brim. Mud sucking at my boots. Then anger hit me so hard I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because when somebody does something so unbelievably stupid, your brain almost refuses to process it. I called Trevor. He picked up cheerful as ever. Morning, Russell. You filled the drainage ditch. Silence. Then, yeah, looks a lot better. My field's underwater. Well, we got rain. That ditch is county drainage. I improved my property. No, you blocked a legal easement. He sighed like I was being dramatic. Russell, it was ugly. I'm not staring at a ditch every morning. You're going to be staring at a lot worse if this water keeps backing up. He laughed. Actual laugh. I think you farmers worry too much. That one stuck with me. You farmers. Like generations of managing land somehow meant less than one landscaping invoice. I called county drainage right after. By that afternoon, Marlene Bishop drove out in her county truck. Marlene had worked drainage enforcement almost 30 years. Tiny woman, silver hair, tough as fence wire. She climbed out, looked once at the east line, and muttered, "Well, that was a dumb move." I almost smiled. She pulled maps from her truck, checked markers, looked at Trevor's field grade, then said exactly what I already knew. "Clear violation. We'll issue notice today. 10 calendar days to reopen. If he refuses, county restores and bills him." Trevor came walking over while she was there, hands in his jacket pockets like he owned the place. Marlene explained the violation. He crossed his arms. I checked my closing documents. Didn't see any easement. Marlene didn't blink. County district easements don't disappear because paperwork was inconvenient. Trevor forced a smile. "I've invested a lot into improving this property." She pointed at the standing water spreading across my field. "And right now you're improving yourself into a lawsuit." Trevor looked at me like this had become personal. Maybe for him it had. For me, it was simpler than that. Land has rules. Water has rules. And pretending they don't exist doesn't change a thing. But Trevor wasn't backing down. And neither was the storm system parked over Benton Ridge. By that evening the clouds rolled back in darker than before, thunder rumbling over flat farmland, and standing there on my porch watching rain sweep across the fields again. I had a feeling this mess was about to get a whole lot worse. That second storm started just after dark. You could hear it building before the first drop hit. Wind pushing across open fields, the old maple behind the barn creaking, thunder rolling low enough to rattle the porch windows. Diane was already asleep upstairs, but I stayed in my recliner by the front window with the lamp off, just watching sheets of rain move sideways through the security light. Farmers do that. You stare at weather and run numbers in your head. How much rain? How long the roots can handle standing water? How much seed you might lose? And that night, every minute felt expensive. By sunrise, the yard looked like a marsh. I drove out again. The ditch Trevor buried was now invisible under pooled brown water. My west rows were flooded deeper than before, and runoff had nowhere to go except spread wider and wider. But something else caught my eye. Trevor's property sat just a little higher than mine near the house, but his backyard sloped down toward the foundation. And because he'd sealed off the drainage path, water had nowhere to escape from that side either. It was collecting. Fast. I could see standing water hugging the back patio. The kind of water that looks harmless right up until it isn't. Around 9 my attorney called. Elliot Kramer. Good man. Local AG law. Dry sense of humor. Marlene sent over the county records, he said. Trevor's got no argument. Think he knows that? Probably. Think he cares? Elliot laughed. That depends how much money he's willing to light on fire. We filed that afternoon. Crop damage, easement obstruction, county enforcement, restoration costs. Simple. Clean. Everything documented. Trevor answered with a lawyer from Springfield named Brad Corman. Expensive suit, shiny shoes, voice smooth enough to sell ice in January. He called Elliot and tried the whole pressure routine. Claimed Trevor had acted in good faith. Claimed easement disclosure was incomplete. Claimed maybe historical drainage didn't apply anymore. Elliot called me afterward. Want the short version? Please. He's bluffing. That figured. Trevor wasn't trying to be right. He was trying to make this expensive enough that I'd get tired. Thing is, he picked the wrong farmer for that. My family had spent 40 years fighting weather, fuel prices, bad markets, and 2 separate drought seasons. Paperwork didn't scare me. 3 days later, I saw Trevor outside talking to a landscaping crew. Still adding decorative stone. Still acting like the whole thing was beneath him. I drove over. He saw me coming and folded his arms. You here to admire the upgrades? I looked toward the buried ditch. Trevor, reopen it. He gave me a tired smile. You really don't let things go. Water's climbing toward your foundation. He glanced back. It'll drain. No, yes. No, Trevor, it won't. His smile disappeared. You know what I'm tired of? Everybody around here acting like because something's been done a certain way for 50 years, it can't change. That's not tradition. That's drainage. You farmers act like the county owns everything. No, but gravity does. He rolled his eyes. Appreciate the concern. And that was that. I headed home. Diane met me in the kitchen. How'd that go? About as well as yelling at rain. She handed me coffee. Then let nature do the explaining. Funny thing is, she was right. The next storm came hard. Middle of the night. Rain pounding so loud it woke both of us. Lightning lit the fields white. I barely slept. At 6 my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Trevor. But he didn't sound polished anymore. Didn't sound calm. He sounded panicked. Russell, what's wrong? There's water in my basement. I sat up. How much? I don't know too much. Where's it coming from? I think through the back wall. I pulled on boots. By the time I reached his driveway, he was standing in pouring rain barefoot in jeans and a sweatshirt. Completely soaked. No sunglasses. No polished smile. Just panic. He waved me inside. The basement stairs looked like a waterfall. Brown water halfway up the steps. Furniture floating. Boxes drifting into walls. His giant sectional couch shoved sideways. You could hear some pumps straining and losing. Trevor looked at me like he wanted me to say something magical. Why is this happening? I looked at the backyard window. Water pressed against the lower foundation line. Nowhere to go. Exactly where that ditch should have been draining. Then I looked at him. This is what I warned you about. He rubbed both hands through wet hair. You really think it's because of the ditch? Yes. It can't be this bad. It can. He stared at the water. Jesus. A contractor he'd hired came splashing in through the back. Foundation saturated, he shouted. Water tables pushing up. Trevor turned pale. What do I do? And there it was. That moment. The one where pride finally runs out. I didn't gloat. Didn't smile. Didn't need to. I just said, open the ditch. He nodded instantly. Okay. Excavators arrived that afternoon. Rain still coming. Mud everywhere. Big track machine tearing through fresh sod. Trevor paid a fortune to install. Decorative stone piled aside. Grass peeled back. And underneath, packed clay over the original channel. By evening they broke through. I was standing at the fence when it happened. A rush of muddy water suddenly punched through the cut and started moving east exactly where it had for decades. Fast. Hard. Like the land itself exhaled. Trevor stood next to me soaked through watching thousands of gallons disappear down the reopened ditch. Didn't say anything for a while. Then quietly, I should have listened. I kept my eyes on the flow. Would have saved you trouble. He laughed once. Short. Bitter. No kidding. For 2 days the fields drained. Not fast enough to save every acre. But enough. The standing water dropped. Rows reappeared. The basement crew hauled ruined furniture out to dumpsters. Industrial fans ran nonstop. And around town, people noticed. Small towns always notice. At Miller's feed store, one guy asked if Trevor was opening an indoor fishing pond. Another asked if his basement boat launch was county approved. Diane told me to quit smiling every time somebody brought it up. I said I wasn't smiling. She gave me that look wives give when they know exactly how full of it you are. But the legal side kept moving. Trevor's lawyers stopped sounding confident. County engineering submitted maps dating back to 1954. Drainage district minutes. Survey stakes. Maintenance invoices. Everything. Then Marlene found something even better. Photos from a county inspection 12 years ago. Clear images of the ditch exactly where Trevor buried it. Timestamped. Official. No wiggle room. Elliot nearly framed them. Meanwhile, Trevor's insurance denied most of the basement damage. Improper drainage modification. Owner caused. He told me that himself one evening when he came over. First time he'd ever stepped onto my porch. He looked exhausted. Older. Like he'd aged a year and a month. They denied 80%. I nodded. That's rough. He laughed. Pretty sure I earned it. Diane brought iced tea. He thanked her. Then sat there looking out at the fields. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I know. I spent a lot on that house. Wanted it perfect. Country land doesn't stay perfect. He nodded slowly. In the city, if something looks bad, you fix it. Out here, ugly things usually exist for a reason. That landed. You could tell. He stared toward the ditch. Water moving calm and steady under sunset light. Then he said quietly, Brad still wants to fight. What do you want? He took a long breath. I honestly don't know. And neither of us spoke after that. Just listened to frogs down by the lower field and the last trickle of runoff moving east where it belonged. But by then the court date was already set. And once lawyers, county officials, crop loss estimates, and hard evidence start moving together, there's really no stopping the machine. Trevor knew it. I knew it. The whole county knew it. And a week later we walked into that courtroom with every eye in Benton Ridge waiting to see how expensive one buried ditch was about to become. The courthouse in Benton Ridge isn't much to look at. Red brick, white columns out front. Old floors inside that creak loud enough to announce every step. I'd been in there before for county zoning meetings and tax hearings, But walking in that morning felt different. This one had weight to it. Trevor was already there. Dark suit, tie loosened, coffee untouched beside him. A month earlier he'd looked like a guy designing magazine-perfect landscaping. That morning he looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His attorney, Brad Corman, still had that polished city confidence, but even he looked less certain than before. Elliot sat next to me flipping through folders. He leaned over and whispered, "You nervous?" I shrugged. "About the same as planting season." He grinned. "That bad?" "Worse." Judge Eleanor Whitaker came in right on time. Late 60s. Sharp eyes. Raised on a farm outside Decatur before law school. Everybody knew she didn't waste time and didn't care much for fancy arguments when plain facts were sitting right in front of her. Brad started. Tried the disclosure angle again. Tried saying Trevor acted reasonably based on available documents. Said the drainage issue wasn't obvious enough. Suggested maybe county mapping was outdated. Judge Whitaker listened for a while without changing expression. Then Elliot stood, and that's when the whole thing started unraveling. He laid out the county drainage maps first, then survey records, then inspection reports, then the time-stamped photographs Marlene found. One after another. Simple, clear, undeniable. Then Elliot brought out drone photos of my flooded field and side-by-side pictures of Trevor's buried ditch compared to the restored channel after excavation. The room got very quiet. Even Brad stopped interrupting. Then Marlene testified. Hands folded. Voice steady. Explained drainage district law. Explained county maintenance. Explained exactly how runoff traveled across the basin. Then she looked directly at Trevor. Mr. Hale was informed in person, then formally notified by the county, and still chose not to restore the easement until after his own property sustained damage. That hit hard. Trevor swallowed and looked down. Then Elliot called me. I told the truth. How long my family had worked that land. How the ditch had always run. How many acres flooded. How much crop was lost. And then Elliot asked one last question. Mr. Mercer, did you warn Mr. Hale before the flooding? Yes. And after county notice? Yes. What did you tell him? I looked over at Trevor. He finally met my eyes. And I said, I told him water remembers where it belongs. There was a little silence after that. Then Judge Whitaker called Trevor up. Asked him directly, did Mr. Mercer warn you about the easement before you filled the ditch? Trevor cleared his throat. Yes. Did county administration warn you? Yes. And why did you proceed? He hesitated. Long enough the whole room felt it. Then he gave the only honest answer left. I thought they were exaggerating. Judge Whitaker nodded once. No anger. No speech. Just wrote something down. Then she gave her ruling. Direct and fast. The drainage easement was valid. Trevor knowingly obstructed county infrastructure. His actions directly caused crop damage and unnecessary county expense. He was responsible for restoration, responsible for agricultural losses, responsible for county penalties, responsible for legal fees. Total damages came to $158,000, and he'd cover any additional repair costs tied to permanent restoration. No drama, no raised voice, just numbers. But in that courtroom, those numbers landed louder than thunder. Trevor sat there motionless. Brad leaned toward him whispering. Trevor barely reacted. I'd love to tell you I felt triumphant, that I walked out feeling 10 feet tall. Truth is, it felt quieter than that, like a knot finally loosening. Outside the courthouse, people gathered under the trees. Farmers, neighbors, county workers, everybody pretending not to stare. Marlene came down the steps beside me. Well, she said, guess the ditch stays. I laughed. Looks that way. She headed for her truck. Trevor came out a minute later. Alone. No lawyer. No confidence. Just tired. He walked over. Stopped a few feet away. For a second I thought maybe he wanted to argue again. Instead he said, Russell? I'm sorry. Real simple. Real quiet. And somehow that hit harder than court. I nodded. I know. I should have listened. Yeah. He looked toward the parking lot. House still smells like mildew. That'll linger. He laughed. Actually laughed. Feels fair. I still think about that sometimes. Standing there that stormy night watching rain hit the windows. Knowing exactly what was coming. Would I change anything? Honestly, I don't know. Because part of living out here is respecting things bigger than you. Weather, land, water. You don't control them. You work with them. And when you ignore them, they tend to teach expensive lessons. So I'm curious what you think. If you warned your neighbor more than once, showed him the records, brought in the county, and he still ignored every word, would you have kept pushing to save him? Or would you let the water teach the lesson itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I read every one of them. And trust me, around here people still bring up Trevor Hale's basement every time the clouds roll in.